Hey everybody, in today's first reading from the Acts of the Apostles, we have a really fascinating story about Paul from the Acts of the Apostles. And the ending and the beginning of the reading give us some interesting kind of parameters. The first line, wishing to determine the truth. And this line refers to a Roman commander, I guess, who has Paul in custody but wants to figure out why he's created this stir with the Jews, and so he puts him before the Sanhedrin. And what happens is Paul, he knows the game. He knows that some are Sadducees and some are Pharisees, some believe in the resurrection, some don't. And so he's able to play to that and create this kind of raucous conflict so intense that the commander pulls Paul out and back to containment, I guess. And once he's back in the compound, the Lord says to him, take courage just in this way that you've borne witness to me. That's what you're going to do in Rome. Taking this kind of quest for truth and the idea that, how exactly is it that Paul bore witness? He understood the game, he understood the players, and was able to work with the system. And that's the way that Paul is going to bear witness in Rome, I guess. These two kind of bookends of the story, the bread to the sandwich, if you want, leaves one with much to ponder, and it has something to say about, what comes to mind for me is what Jesus says in another place. He says, the children of this generation are better than the children of light, about kind of working with the system, and he calls for a certain cunning. Then that's not to say like, mischievousness or manipulation or dishonesty, but knowing the name of the game and being able to work within the system and the resources and the dynamics that are given. That Jesus on some level encourages that, and we see Paul kind of working that through in today's reading from the Acts of the Apostles. Simon Sinek, who's kind of a motivational speaker and something of an organizational psychological consultant, talks about knowing which game you're in, and he talks about the infinite games and finite games, and that one has to know clearly the rules and the nature of the game we're playing to play successfully. Harnessing ingenuity and intelligence and insight and understanding as a way to preaching the gospel and working for the genuine, authentic good of brothers and sisters, irrespective of creed and so forth. That certainly seems to be a central way in which we're being called to give witness in Rome or in whatever city in which we end up finding ourselves. Anyway, I don't know how clear that is. I don't know how helpful. Interesting thought. It's a fascinating story, and I do think it has something to tell. It's worth thinking about given the complexity of the systems within which we find ourselves.